You know, we like to think we have a pretty good handle on the forces shaping our economy. But what if the biggest risks aren't the ones we see on the news every night? What if they're the ones we can't easily see? Today, we're going to peel back the layers and look at the unseen tremors building just beneath the surface of the global financial system. When you think financial crisis, what comes to mind? I bet it's something like 2008, right? Bank runs, stock market tickers plunging, pure panic. But here's the question we're exploring today. What if the next massive threat is something quieter, slower, something that's already happening? Okay, so to really get what's different now, we first need to take a quick look at the classic model of a financial crash. It's a story that, believe me, has played out over and over again. And that story has a name for its climax, the Minsky Moment. It's named after an economist, Hyman Minsky. This is the breaking point. It's that heart-stopping moment when all the optimism, all the risky borrowing just shatters, and the whole house of cards collapses under its own weight.
Now, Minsky was clear. This doesn't just happen overnight. It's a slow burn. It builds up in 3 phases. First, you've got the hedge phase. Everything's stable. People can afford their loans, principal and interest. No problem. Then, things get a little spicy. We enter the speculative phase. Now borrowers can only afford to pay the interest. And finally, you hit the Ponzi phase. At this point, they can't even cover the interest. The only thing keeping them afloat is the hope that prices will keep rising forever. And that, right there, is when the whole system becomes incredibly fragile.
Right, so that's the classic crash. It's a useful model for sure. But here's the thing. Today's financial world is, well, it's a whole different beast. The risks aren't neatly contained anymore. They're spread all over the place, creating these hidden fault lines all through the system. And, this quote from the CFA Institute just nails it. The real threat today isn't one single massive earthquake. It's the steady accumulation of interconnected risks. Think of it like a web of smaller problems that, when they're all linked together, create a massive fragility.
And just look at this list. It's wild. We're not just talking about banks anymore. You've got so-called shadow banks, the whole crypto world, geopolitics, climate change, and the constant threat of a major cyber attack. It's a much, much more complicated picture than it was back in the day.
All right, so let's zoom in on one of these hidden risks. This one is kind of creepy. It's what some people have started calling the zombie economy.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like something out of a bad horror movie, right? But seriously, think about it. Is it possible for a company to be totally unviable, basically dead, but somehow it just keeps on going? Well, the answer is yes. And it happens because of this weird feedback loop called the zombie lending channel. Now, your gut probably tells you that when interest rates go up, the weak companies should just die off, right? But what's so strange is that sometimes lenders have an incentive to keep throwing money at these zombie firms just to stop them from defaulting. It's a way to kick the can down the road, but it really does is clog up the whole economy with unproductive companies. Okay, from zombies to skyscrapers, let's pivot to another huge part of the economy where things are not quite as they seem: commercial real estate. You hear a lot of scary headlines, but some experts see something else entirely. This one line really flips the script. The idea here is that for a huge chunk of the market, this isn't a sudden, chaotic collapse. It's a slow, deliberate repricing, a fundamental reevaluation of what these buildings are actually worth now. And this is where it gets really interesting. The market isn't just dead in the water, it's splitting in two. You've got capital fleeing from things like older office buildings, but at the same time, it's flooding into other areas, like data centers and modern warehouses. It's not a collapse, it's a massive reshuffling. So, that giant wave of loans that everyone's worried about coming due? This quote suggests we might be looking at it all wrong. It's not necessarily a ticking time bomb. It's more like a sorting mechanism. It's the moment of truth that separates the strong, valuable properties from the weak ones. All right, so we've got zombie companies, a massive real estate reshuffle. But these kind of feel like symptoms, don't they? What if there's something much, much bigger and slower moving underneath it all? A true tectonic plate shifting beneath our feet. And that's where we get to the real tectonic plate here: wealth inequality. For a long, long time, we talked about this as a social issue or a political one. But now economists are finding direct, measurable links between how concentrated wealth is and how stable our entire financial system is. And this isn't just a vague idea. We have the data. And honestly, the numbers are pretty staggering. Looking at 150 years of data,
A big jump in the share of wealth held by just the top 1% is linked to a 3 to 8 percentage point increase in the probability of a financial crisis. That makes it a really powerful predictor.
So, how? How does a gap between the wealthiest and everyone else actually make the financial system shakier? Well, the theory goes that as more and more money gets concentrated at the very top, it has to go somewhere. It starts chasing returns, and that can fuel huge asset bubbles in things like stocks and housing. It's a bizarre paradox. The concentration of wealth ends up creating the very instability that puts it all at risk.
So when you put it all together, the big picture has changed dramatically. We've gone from worrying about one big visible earthquake, that Minsky Moment, to a world of constant interconnected tremors. The zombie economy, the great real estate sorting, the deep pressure from wealth inequality, they're all shaking the ground in different ways, all at the same time. And I think that leaves us with the real question. It's no longer about if the ground will shake, it's about whether we're prepared to live in a world where it's always trembling.